Okay. Zooby, zooby, zoo. I think we're good. I think we are live. Welcome in, everybody. Pull up my pants here before we get too far along.
Live from Umoja, it's 1 million cups.
All right, let's see here. How can I not spill the coffee? Don't spill the beans.
Well, spill the beans, just not the coffee beans.
I feel like I should sit over here instead, maybe. Oh, we don't have Dave on screen.
Oh.
You want to sit over here, or you want to pull your chair over a little closer?
You're not on screen, so you'll have to come in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either move your chair or move your body. Take your pick.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. We can all use the cool couch.
It's actually a comfortable place to take a nap.
Yeah?
I don't take naps
That's
there. I don't take naps at work.
that's what we do before 1 million cups, and then we get caffeinated and we're ready to go. All right, I think we're all set. Everybody good?
Good.
Final check-in. Shall we start the lights?
Check 1, 2.
It's time to start the music. It's time to light the lights. I need my mouse. We're not ready.
Oh,
Yeah.
not quite.
Technology vexes us. We're all old people here, apparently. All right. Are we ready? Let's go. It's time once again, everybody. Welcome to another 1 million cups. I'm Alan Caraway, our host. I'm joined today by Ryan Witten with the AK version 3 and David with Umoja, our home here at the co-working space at 3001 Porcupine Street in Mountain View. So if you are on the road on your way here, joining us on Zoom, there's still a little bit of time and there's a few seats in the back open if you want to try and squeeze your way in. But come on in, come on down. If you're joining us online, we're glad you're here because today is super important. We've got a great 1 million cups for you today. So let's not waste any time. The mission of 1 million cups is to figure out how to be professional here. There we go. Is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all types of new and aspiring entrepreneurs throughout the United States. So right now, all across the country, people are doing exactly what we're doing right here, joining together around the concept of entrepreneurship in our community. Today we're continuing our town hall that we started last week, discussing the build to suit proposal that we're trying to put together for the Economic
Development Authority.
Thank you, the Economic Development Authority,
EDA.
the federal EDA. So let me turn the conversation over to Ryan to get us started. I'll just go ahead and
Hey, thank
turn
you.
off
I
the-
can see now. That's great.
I'm not lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay,
Got
a
a
little
couple
matrix
spots
chair
there.
going on here.
No.
Okay, so let's begin the discussion. So last week we had a real valuable talk where we kind of started this process. We opted to move to the venture side, right? Not
Yeah,
the
we
capital
made-
side.
Yeah, so since the last time we met, we were originally considering going through a capital proposal, which would look at supporting angel investors, venture capital investors, and more on the finance side to then support, educate, and engage to deploy capital throughout Alaska's startup ecosystem. And we've made a little bit of a pivot in our application process. And so we're looking now at the venture side. Because the venture side would allow us to support the early stage venture startups, folks that are doing work throughout the ecosystem. And so that's the current state of where we are at. We are looking at the connections between infrastructure. And if we have a bunch of infrastructure investment that is being made in Alaska, it's going to do things like build a bunch of broadband and telecoms capacity for us, which is then going to open a bunch of opportunities for folks to do remote work, to do telehealth, to work in their communities. And there's also this matching need of supporting folks to receive healthcare in their communities. And so we've got HealthTie and we have the work that is going on through JEDC to support elder care down in Southeast. And so those are two partners who have stepped up and are interested in the application. Thanks to Brian and Jacqueline, I think both were at last week's conversation. And so now the question is, what are some of the ways that we could support folks who are looking to work in those domains? What are the needs that exist? Because there's a lot of good work that's happening, but as we've seen throughout our startup ecosystem and throughout the state of Alaska, that work's generally fragmented. And there's good work happening in silos, but there is not necessarily a huge connection between the silos. So we've got sort of this dance to do, which is that we don't want to be too broad with the application and try to work in too big an area across too many domains, because you really want to be able to show that you can make progress with an application and you can hit some meaningful metrics to demonstrate success with your program that the funder is going to be giving you some funds for. But we also have a challenge that Alaska is geographically very large with a low population density. And if you have just a low population density in general, that also means that proportionally, you're going to have a lower percentage of folks who are engaged in the startup ecosystem or who are trying to launch a venture. And so the farther you niche down, the more challenging it's going to be to then identify and support folks. Once you find them, you can give a lot of support and it can be very tailored. And so we have some very tight relationships that exist in Alaska, which is very, very helpful to be able to build trust and build momentum. But it also means that those relationships and those connection points tend to be pretty loaded with what their capacity is. They're already carrying some pretty full plates in a lot of cases. And so how can we raise awareness of the activity that's happening throughout Alaska? How can we engage more people in the ecosystem? How can we, even though activity is happening that is pretty spread out, how could we support and sort of connect so that we have a more systemic and holistic understanding of the activity that's happening? That's a bit of the question that we're exploring. And my thinking is that we could be working with programs like Accelerate Alaska and with the Innovation Summit, which are two conferences that happen throughout Alaska, to be sort of like a connecting place and a platform for presentations, for engagement. And we also have some tailored support that could be provided by HealthTie and by GBeta and by JEDC and their existing work. And that we could then layer on top of that some of the backbone ecosystem support work that AKB3 is hoping to do. One of the things that we've looked at multiple times throughout our ecosystem is a platform. What is a virtual landing place? And with more broadband capacity, is that more accessible now? And there's sort of like this critical mass tipping point. You need a reason to have people engage with the platform. You need a pull to get people to engage, and funding is a very wonderful pull. Usually money talks, and so that gets people to look at a platform. And so if you have some opportunities to win investment or some grants or any sort of small funding, that would be very helpful. And it's a little bit of this chicken and egg problem, because if you can track your metric, you can see that you have, this large amount of activity that's happening, boy, that becomes really attractive for investors and for potential funders to then say, yeah, we see everything that's happening. And so we want to connect with you. We want to give to this ecosystem. We want to engage. But without that funding, how are you going to entice people to engage with that platform? Because this wouldn't be the first time that we've looked at a platform opportunity in Alaska. And so we've got the makings of a good application. It's certainly a tight time frame to pull things together, something that is not insurmountable, but is going to be a lift. But the bigger challenge is, even throughout this application, we've got a little bit of limited capacity from folks within the ecosystem to engage with it and to allocate time towards it. so that's a little bit of where we're at, how this application has sort of evolved, and where we're thinking about heading. And at this point, I'm trying to figure out how hard to push on the thing, or if it makes sense to say we've got some good foundation in place and we need to approach this next year with a strongly formed plan. But I'm very hesitant to do that because I think that some support now would be really helpful for a larger application in the future. But, yeah, so that's where we're at this point. Questions, comments, concerns? I'm really curious what you guys just heard from what I talked about, if that matches your understanding of where the ecosystem is at, if this potential pathway to engage folks through elder care and telehealth services and that's opened up as a result of broadband, if that seems like a viable narrative. And what y'all think is necessary within our ecosystem to help bring people together, to make connecting easier. I think of places like Umoja as one of those really nice connecting spots within our community. It's low barrier. It's easy for folks to come here and to spend time here and to get connected with other activities that are happening. So how do we lean into those sorts of spaces and provide more supports, more on-ramps, and get folks more engaged? What adds value in people's lives to participate, which is then gets me a little bit into the challenges of translating, startup language, EDA language into the realities of Alaska. But that's kind of another conversation. So maybe we can come back to that one a little bit later.
For me, it's just starting to find. I mean, I really didn't know a whole lot about it until last week, and I was like, wow, just open the eyes and ears and the brain to function and realize that this is really an idea that can definitely bring Alaska up to literally 21st century if we really push forward on it and put all the elements in place. But getting the word of mouth out, or getting it out to the different organizations, the different individuals and stuff like that, I think that's a key factor. But we're limited on our resources, so how do we expand on that resource to be able to reach the people that really need to be reached? And it's not a lot of people that need to be reached, but it's the key people that need to be reached, because once you reach to key people, it flows like wildfire. It just flows really well. But now it's just that connection. So that's where I'm like, what can I do to help? I'm excited about it because I feel that this has always been something that's been brewing in me. So how do I myself be able to help to make this a bigger process?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, as I listen to you speak, I'm kind of sitting here thinking of just a few short years ago, it seemed like there were some really good initiatives that connected a lot of these support services throughout the state. We have some tremendous resources here. The Small Business Development Center, the Wisdom Business Center, kind of the same thing, I guess. The Women's Business Center, the Veterans Business Opportunity Center, the work that Business Impact Northwest is doing, some of the new initiatives with SBA. We've had a lot of great things coming up and a lot of these support services that are out there. And I have to think that a lot of them are doing the same thing, that there's wasted capacity in having all of these organizations kind of, I wish that there was a way perhaps that we could unite all of these folks under kind of some common themes and say, we all are speaking the same language. We're all holding the same banner and pushing towards the same goal. Why can't we maybe take, instead of spending 20% of our productivity on trying to do these kinds of things, what if we took 10% of our capacity and put it towards a collective consortium to help create this connective tissue that brings all these things together? Right. Where when somebody in one organization comes up with a great new way of doing something, that information can be easily disseminated to the other support organizations. And how do our entrepreneurs know which of those services to obtain or to reach out to? Whether they're applicable, whether their services are applicable to them, or where they should even begin that conversation, because each of them would have something that's just a little bit different, whether it's coming in through a website or through a direct connection. I wonder if there's a way to build some capacity into something like that.
You know, what you're speaking to really mirrors things that I've seen within the workforce development system and within the mental health care systems and within healthcare at large, where knowing who is the appropriate service provider or support that you could be accessing is challenging. And we're working in a very complex set of systems that have lots of different parts and players. And the role of a navigator or as a guide within that system is really pretty helpful and pretty important to help folks be able to access and make the most of the services and supports that are available to them. In those ecosystems, there's support from the state to help with some of that. There's the Alaska Workforce Innovation Board, their investment board, AWIB is just how I am known to refer to them. So, I know that there's in the mental health world, there are peer support specialists and clinical associates that help people to navigate these systems. So there are parallels. And small business development centers can be a nice way to help connect and guide folks through. But it does seem like there is another layer, and there isn't really a cohesive system or guide within the innovation ecosystem. Similarly, within the infrastructure system, there isn't really a guide or a navigator to help support folks. And so I think that there's an opportunity to potentially help combine those two, which this could be a pathway to start that. And one of the key things in my mind is like, if you don't know what's going on, you don't have a common landing place to go to, how are you going to know? And if you rely on individual connections and relationships, those are very powerful and important. But the second that someone changes a role is the second that then that connection is gone. And now this person that you talk to that then helped you navigate to all these different things, if they're not in that position anymore or the responsibilities change, then do you know who to connect with? Do you know how to find the supports that you're looking for? So I think that there is a need there. I think it could be piloted. That's why I think that a smaller EDA application here, there's the initial one, Ignite, I think is the smallest funding amount on the venture side that goes up to 300,000 from the EDA, and you need a 1-to-1 match, so that would be a total of 600,000. I think that that's probably close to the amount of, that's the appropriate size for us for where we're at within the ecosystem. The next sizes up are really looking for a more strongly connected set of players and activities. And going through this application process, I don't feel confident that we have the ability to demonstrate those strong connections. I think there's a lot of activity that's going on, but I am not confident that it is connected or coordinated or supported consistently.
So knowing the fact that you feel that it's not supported accordingly, how does one get to that point, or how does one figure out how to get that supported?
It's a good question. What does a fully supported ecosystem project, what would that look like?
Great question. This is me making it up off the top of my head here.
It's all on you. This is whatever you say is binding. If you leave anything out, it won't be in the final product. So make sure you get it all in here.
True. Yeah, we're going to take this recording and this is going to be our application. I knew it. I say that jokingly, but at the end of the day, I don't think that it's right for me to say this is what I think is needed for the ecosystem, and this is the answer. I think the reality is that this needs to be co-created. And it's something that like through that co-creation process, you build alignment and you build shared understanding for where you want to go and what you would like to accomplish. And so, I can offer some things that I think would be helpful, but the reality is like this needs to be something that we're all investing in and contributing to. I think going back to the original question, what would this cohesive connected ecosystem look like? How would we know that that exists? I think that in my mind, we would have some sort of a connecting platform or have some sort of like a networking place for folks to be able to connect. We'd have sort of like a repository of information, a community calendar, a welcome mat basically for our innovation ecosystem, so that if somebody came from outside of Alaska and said, I want to get connected, where do I go? They would at least have a door to walk through or to knock on to say, hey, where do I start? And we would have a way to guide folks, so like the top of the funnel right now. I think that's one of the things that I would be looking for. Another thing that I would be looking for is a way to collect some consistent metrics between each of the different stakeholders and players. Right now, Launch Alaska is doing great work, but I couldn't tell you how many companies they're working with, how much money they've had invested, where those companies are coming from, what are the outcomes that they're accomplishing, how much carbon are these companies sequestering, like, these like important metrics that I'd really like us to have a shared understanding of within our ecosystem.
Yeah.
How much capital was deployed, how much capital was available, how many startups were created, how many started, how many closed down. The ADN has their is it weekly or monthly where they have like the
Open and shut. Yeah.
open and shut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's our open and shut for the startup ecosystem? I can tell you just because I know of like one or two that I've heard that have like Elevated Oats. I could tell you that Elevated Oats is starting to close down, but I couldn't tell you why it is. I couldn't tell you what we learned through that process or how that's lifting up the ecosystem through that process. Like I know that they did great work. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't understand. Similarly, like we've had a couple startups that have exited. And so they've hit this magical place where like you have outside capital, somebody has invested and brought equity to your company, and like you are now stepping away from it. Like that is in the venture capital startup world, like that is the goal, that is the end game. And so what did we learn from those?
How do we capture those metrics and those lessons learned?
Yeah. And so those are things that are like on the backside, at the end of the process for a startup, but what are we doing on the front side too? Like, what are the grant applications that we're putting out into the world, or that like we're applying for? We put an application together and then it goes away. And there's a lot of time, hours and hours and hours. Some applications you easily put 200 hours into. And at the end of the day, like that application ends up on a shelf somewhere. And what did we learn? What could we share? How could we
Learn how to apply for a grant.
Yeah. Yeah. How can we learn from that and help other people to apply?
I'd like to tie back into something you said a minute ago real quick before we get too much further down the rabbit hole. One of the things I heard you say is when you were talking about, there's a lot of voices that need to be heard in this conversation. You don't want it just to be you. So who else do we really need to hear from in this conversation? Whose voices have been really absent that would add a lot of value to this, whether that's, organizations or, not pointing fingers or anything or shaking a finger at anyone or anything like that, but more from a point of awareness. And what are the things is there someone else that we could be reaching out to gain additional insights here?
Yeah.
Hey, Alan.
Yes, sir.
I think your question is the right one. And, the obvious, answer from my perspective is we need to hear more from the entrepreneurs. Everything about what Kauffman Foundation has done, the 1 Million Cups, the Techstars ethos, all come down to creating entrepreneurial led ecosystems. And, I think we try hard at that, but the fact is, there's not enough of that voice in there. And just encourage you to maybe pivot a little bit to see if we can get some feedback from Susan and Andrew and Andre, who's on the line with us. And, all three of those are entrepreneurs that are navigating the system. And I think we need to keep that that question that you're asking always out there, but also, figuring out how do we engage the entrepreneurs more actively in guiding what we do. That being said, after, maybe coming back from them, I've got a couple other thoughts, but I'd love to hear from any of those three that are online that might have some thoughts on what we can do to strengthen the ecosystem here and how we could use the EDA grant and potentially some investment in backbone support activities to better support the entrepreneurs.
And don't forget the capacity crowd here in the studios at Umoja as well. We've got anyone here that would like to share their thoughts as well. So yeah, anyone else joining us on the call or here in the room have any thoughts about what Kai just said with regards to who we need to speak to and hearing from the entrepreneurs? Any thoughts that you'd like to share? Up to you. You can speak. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right, thank you, Gail.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gail Jackson, the owner and founder of Creative Rhythms. What's stirring inside of me is what I've heard is the silo effect. What kind of community as an entrepreneur am I coming into? Community is of people coming together, helping to support one another. And yeah, I'm stirring with the silos. Why is it that everyone is in their silo? Is it the thought of lack, that there's not enough, so I have to claim my stake? And if we come together, and am I losing my business as I envision it? Or is it like, quote unquote, and excuse me for those that are in partnership or married, that sense of losing their individuality? Am I losing my sense of my business if I join in a cooperative? Or yeah, so that's what's stirring inside of me as an entrepreneur. What kind of community am I coming into when there's so many silos? In my business, I'm reaching out to folks to collaborate, and yet it's not reciprocated. And that's a question I'm wondering why. Geographically, yes, we are a big community, and yet we are a small community.
Yeah.
And I just got back from Italy, and I saw community coming together to help support the arts, to help support businesses. And it doesn't have to, that Italy is just an example. And I'm wondering why, I mean, people come to Alaska, why are they here? Is it because they want to be away from everything, so the silo does work for them? That's my question. What am I coming into as an entrepreneur when I hear the silo? And I've heard it numerous times. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll take a stab at that as a recovering member of one of the local nonprofits here in town that supports entrepreneurship. In a lot of my time that was there, we frequently got bogged down with the challenges of the day. And speaking frankly, there was a period of time where I had over 400 some odd clients that I would need to meet with on a regular basis. So I felt like I was just knee deep in it, and just every day was just, if I take 10 minutes for preparation, this is the same trap that a lot of founders find themselves in. A lot of business owners find themselves constantly mired in the challenges of the day and never taking the time or resources to move up that ladder and spend some time at a little bit higher level, thinking of how you can impact the community as a whole. So for me, in that time as a practitioner, it was really hard for me to cast off the thought that the best impact I can have today is to meet with my clients and try and create that space. So I apply a little grace to these other organizations in the same sense that they're doing great work, and they're doing good things for the people that they're supporting. We're just trying to figure out how to get a little bit more, how to collaborate a little bit better. And I think that if we do it right, it actually is less work for everyone involved.
Yeah, Alan, I'd say that perspective mirrors mine as well. That what I've generally seen is that the folks who are doing work are really doing a lot of work and doing a lot of valuable work. The challenge is that capacity is pretty limited to take on additional extra work, and that my perspective is that in Alaska, it's not necessarily that we are siloed, but almost that like we are just so spread out that there doesn't need to be a barrier, but there's too much distance in between the people and the work that's being done. And so I am hopeful that, that's one of the roles that AKB3 can help support, is that connecting and that cohesion building, to sort of serve as like the fascia in between the different model groups that are doing important work here. I'm curious, when you think about the community that you saw in Italy and the community that you're looking for, that you would like to see here, what do you see? What could that look like? What would you want as an entrepreneur to see as a reality for our ecosystem?
I saw artists, musicians, chefs, people working in hospitality coming together to form a place that's hospitable for folks coming in for retreats. We have a beautiful state that we live in. Bringing artists together, chefs together, people in hospitalities to create, bringing people to Alaska for the Alaskan experience and what we offer, the music that we offer, the culinary arts that we offer, the people that are gifted in hospitality, let's see, and different other service industries, different businesses coming together. And it can be this retreat center here or this group here, and yet we come together to brainstorm how we can have better experiences for folks that live in the state as well as those coming to visit the state. An opportunity for entrepreneurs to share their gifts in community where we're all supporting one another. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else out there in internet land, internet world land, want to unmute and comment or put something in the chat? Let's just give a couple of moments here to create some space.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Welcome to 1Mcups.
Thank you. I was thinking about what you were saying, working with villages or rural Alaska, Alaska has 12 regions, as you all know. So each one has 12 regional corporations, and coastal areas have CDQ groups. Each one of them have a marketplace. So each region has, picking up, small businesses in the villages, financing $10,000, $20,000. Small 60-something like Apitka, they fund $60,000. So maybe work with those guys, regional corps. Another point I want to make is rural Alaska, Alaska natives, 60% under 18 years of age. So look into what ANSAP is doing with, Alaska Native Science and Engineering program. Maybe work with them to start an entrepreneurship startup class together so that you get the pipeline of kids from bush, get them to, into entrepreneurship. So Another way to work to reach out to native communities during AFN, before the AFN, there is a youth and elders conference. 3,000-4,000 kids from rural Alaska coming in. Work with them, set up a booth or have a workshop on what you are doing. You know, I'm sure you get lots of feedback. Let's see, infrastructure. There will be lots of spending, as you know, on to address the honey bucket issue. Over $3 billion will be spent in the state. Instead of all the contractors, all the construction mafia, you know, getting this money, get startups involved. You know, there are, you know, lots of, you know, minority owned or whatever startups, you know, that work trying to bring water and sewer cost effective, not $20-40 million systems that village will be stuck for, you know, with maintenance costs. Work with, you know, individual system, you know, all the tiny homes, you know, cabins, NASA, you know, housing or whatever, you know, modular units, things like that. That's just a few thoughts that I want to share just right away. I work with Jasmine. We have a nonprofit, and we do a joint project on putting vending machines. Our first goal was to put a vending machine at the airport, but now, because airport is a, you know, pains in the, you know, neck to work with, highly politicized bureaucracy. You know, over a year we applied for a lease. You know, speaking of infrastructure, you know, they have a facility, Great Pacific Seafoods. In '80s, state of Alaska, EDA put millions into the, you know, state-of-the-art seafood processing. We as a nonprofit trying to set up a food hub there, you know, for villages, a staging, training to do the community prototype kitchen. But state DOT and airport managers, they're just red taping us for a year. This is bullshit, you know, to be honest with you. It's got to be, you know, dealt with. But with Jasmine, we work on putting, and now we work with Jasmine to put a vending machines that sells traditional dried like fish, reindeer jerky at the ANC at the hospital, so that villages could market their products. We are trying to find a, you know, retail channel for villages to sell the locally based products. And vending machine, we found kind of like a figure narrowed down model where a small village could produce enough for the vending to sell through the vending machine. Not big as Trident or Copper River, Silver Bay, but small village-based operation. So anyway, thank you for your, you know, discussions and questions. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate your comments. I think that, oh, am I stepping on somebody there? Was that you, Kai? Anybody else?
No, I think you just got some background noise on my side.
Oh, gotcha. Excellent. Well, thank you. Excellent comments. I'm adding as much of that as I can to our little notes here.
Yeah. Andre, I'm curious.
If I can add also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Each EDA is funding comprehensive economic development strategy for each region. So if you look at the, you know, each village contributes funding to, I mean, input to the comprehensive economic development strategy. So you can see what kind of infrastructure villages need by village or overall for the whole region. So usually regional nonprofits like Kaverek, AVCP are the ones who are putting those together. So maybe, and they're the ones also involved with labor force development. They manage social programs. Maybe it's another way to work with them on the startups and, you know, as partners, regional partners. Have like each one of them have a regional coordinator for startups, something like that, you know. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that suggestion. Thank you for your comments. One of the things that I have been trying to wrap my head around is the language that we use to describe this system and to describe the work of innovation and startups. Because what I've found is that when I use those words, that if you're in the ecosystem, or if you're a member of the more dominant white culture, that those words make sense. But perhaps if you identify with a different culture or with a different demographic, that startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, those words don't resonate with you, but the ideals and the values of them do make more sense. And that there's other words. So I wonder if there's maybe this translation process that is necessary to help folks feel welcome within this space and to help it make sense. Because I see a lot of what I would consider to be very entrepreneurial activity happening in rural Alaska and throughout our state.
Oh, absolutely.
But when I say those words, it doesn't resonate. And so I'm wondering, what am I missing? Or how could we maybe shift how we describe ourselves, or frame what it is that we were trying to accomplish in a way that makes sense to folks in rural Alaska, folks in different groups throughout the state. I'm really curious what y'all's thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm personally 100% behind all efforts to make this world a more accessible place. I've never really been fond of the concept that certain things you have are only for certain people to know. I think, I want to get this information out to as many people as possible, and making that in a way that is accessible for people to be able to receive, make meaning of, and digest, and either participate or know how to share with other people. And you bring up a very good point. In my years of supporting entrepreneurship and initiatives through some of the native corporations and things, I've frequently had opportunities to grade business plans or provide feedback on pitches and things. And there is a very different vocabulary in rural Alaska than there is in Anchorage. Just ask what a snow machine is called in different parts of the state, right? Or if you really want to make somebody mad, you could say a snowmobile. No offense to anybody from the Midwest, but up here it's a snow machine, a sled, or a snow go, and that's it. If you say anything else, then you get thrown out of the wilderness.
Yeah, I was going to say, as someone from Michigan, I have no idea what a snow machine is, but a snowmobile, that I do understand.
Yeah, right. A snow machine could be something to plow. But again, we're pointing out that the words that are commonly used to describe things can be different in the world that where we're constantly talking to Seattle and we're constantly talking to Los Angeles and New York, where we use that similar vocabulary. But then that makes us potentially more disconnected from our folks that are not right here in the urban centers. So how we can find ways to make that more accessible. I love that conversation.
Yeah.
I agree with that in the fact that we need to really come together on this, and we need to find some common language that includes everybody and not just a certain group. So that's another challenge that we have to put in this element. How do we include everybody, and with everybody having a simple understanding of what's really going on, this ecosystem, this working with entrepreneurs, working with other business owners, but working with other organizations that really opens the door for what we want to do and really thrive to make it happen. So finding that common language.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you
Uh-oh.
recall?
Here it comes.
Do you recall the name of the program in the Northwest Arctic Entrepreneurship area and the meaning behind it that you can share? Sorry, it seems appropriate, but I know it's hard.
Yeah, I really like the name of that program. So Kai's referring to the Northwest Arctic Boroughs Economic Development Council has supported an entrepreneurship development program with myself, AKV3, and then Sustainable Economic Futures to support entrepreneurs in that community. And as part of that process, the community picks a name for what this program is called, something that has meaning to them. And the goal is that we're building capacity within that community for them to have ownership of and to navigate through their entrepreneurship support and develop their entrepreneurial ecosystem within the region. And so the name of that program that they came up with is Piguktuk. And
wow.
Piguktuk is, and I'm probably not announcing or enunciating the cues clear enough there, but Piguktuk is, as I understand it, it's like the act of becoming.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was a really cool name that they have chosen.
And it's Piguktuk?
Pig, I think it's Puguq with a umlaut.
Piguktuk.
And then a TUQ. Yeah.
Very nice. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. You know, and what I'm hearing you guys describe is this challenge of in order to talk to some of the outside ecosystems, you know, to work with LA or Washington or these larger investment groups, you really need to speak their language. You know, if they're going to invest in you, they want to hear you say the things that they're looking for. You know, you have to code talk with them and make sure that you're talking
Absolutely.
their code. But that using that language can shift your, you know, through using the language, it can shift your actions and your thinking. And one of the unique things that I think that we have in Alaska is a unique set of thinking, a unique set of cultural values that, because we are so spread out, because Alaska is this unique place, that we have unique solutions and value that we could share with the outside world. And so how do we connect, support, and do some of this translation without becoming homogenized, without becoming just part of this larger whole? Because while we may be able to connect and then pull down some capital through that process, we may also end up losing a lot of the unique strengths that make us as Alaskans. And that's a challenge.
And I think it's always important to point out, you know, the one thing that we want to be mindful of, especially when you're looking at supporting other groups, you never want to approach those groups with like a canned solution, like, hey, I see you have a problem here, deploy this and it's fixed. You know, you have no idea what they've tried. You have no idea what their goals or whatever are, unless you approach that situation with curiosity and engage those communities in the conversation to holistically find out what the challenges are and what the needs are, and then applying the appropriate solution. Especially up here in Alaska, one of the things in rural Alaska, I mean, you just go anywhere and say, hey, I'm here from the big city and I'm here to help, and everyone will be super excited to see you leave.
That's so true.
Yeah, we also have this, you know, this nice mentality that, you know, experts or people who know have to fly into the state on a 737. You know, we don't have the knowledge in state. You know, we gotta hire some outside consultant or somebody to come in to do what it is that we need to do. If we're serious about it, like, we got to bring them in. And I think that's, you know, that's a crap. But we have a lot of strength here, a lot of knowledge here. We have what we need here within the state, and it's, you know, supporting and building it up. But I think that's a process and a shift in mindset.
Absolutely.
Can I say something?
Please.
You know, you guys talk about how villages don't understand, you know, all the business terms and, you know, venture capital terms. I somewhat don't agree with that, because if you look at the, you know, ANCSA corporations, there are, you know, each village has a corporation, village corporation, or, you know, so Alaska Natives know about all the corporate stuff more than probably people in the room, about all the corporate, you know, regulations and stuff. reading, financial statements, during maybe partnering with Alaska Native Village Corporations Association would work for this group, because oftentimes they run village store, gas station, things like that, all the local businesses, partnering with those guys, with Village Corps could be and through their, shareholder development kind of deal, address it as because that's how the regional corps doing it, so there's those marketplace competitions. Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you for your additional insight there. Just to make sure that this is said and that there's no misunderstanding about that. At least in my conversation, I think we were referring not to a position of ignorance, but just a difference in terminology.
Mhm.
That folks in other areas are absolutely doing all these things, and they can be absolutely crushing it. But if we're going in there and we're asking for a buggy and they're looking for a cart, we're talking two different things.
Mhm.
So it's more trying to figure out ways to make sure that our asks and that our requests or our invitations are using a similar language that is conveying the message that we're trying to convey, as opposed to.
Yeah, it goes back to that rural-urban divide in rail belt communities. And remember, there was a program where they would take high school kids from villages or Anchorage, for exchanges. Maybe that program could be something, bringing rural entrepreneurs to the cities and partnering with Anchorage businesses, things like that, or Umoja, to be a place to host those meetings.
Excellent. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, give a +1 to that comment. I think that the more opportunities that there are for overlap and for exchange, for connection, between the different regions, between across the rural-urban divide, throughout Alaska, and then out
Yes.
to the lower 48 and to the greater world beyond. I think that the more opportunities to connect and to collaborate, the better. And I think that part of the question to figure out is how to welcome folks into those connections in a way that that makes sense and makes them feel like that's a valuable use of their time.
Yes.
And that their input will be appreciated, and that it's not an extractive process, but a collaborative process.
Exactly. Very, very good point. Thank you. All right, so this has been a very good discussion. We've got a lot of good things. I've got some fun notes here to go over with Ryan and Kai when we're finished. I want to thank everyone for your participation in this process, for adding your comments and your thoughts, because that truly is what makes our community better. The biggest thing that's missing is you. And we appreciate you taking your time to participate with us and be here for these 1 Million Cups discussions. Before we close the conversation, are there any last minute comments that anyone in the community would like to share regarding this conversation that we've had here today? And then we'll move into community announcements.
Hey, Alan, two quick things, please. One is I've gotten some new information yesterday that indicates that there's some new activity going on as it relates to early stage startup funding. Those are coming out of initiatives from Center Ice, and I think they're positive. And I think, in terms of this plan for how we build potentially a proposal, the backbone work we can be doing to help people understand what funding options are available, what are being developed, and how to access them is an important piece of the puzzle that's not necessarily related to what we talked about last week of actually taking on building a fund, but instead more the venture side of the EDA proposal of helping people build their ventures by being able to access those funds. Second point is there's an announcement out this morning from the EDA and National Science Foundation that's kind of doubling down on the opportunity of linking and coordinating efforts around major activities related to the innovation hubs and engines. And I've got a proposal out there to some of the state folks trying to figure out, could we develop that kind of collaboration in Alaska where we bring together the NSF and EDA participants, as well as just the applicants that may not even have had a successful application. We piloted this a couple of years ago with the Build Back Better and the Good Job Challenge applications, and I think got some good demonstrated results and metrics out of that. And I'm suggesting that we really ought to leverage those public projects that are going on. I don't know how to do that, but I'm suggesting that might be another piece of this proposal, is to actually be the convener to bring these folks together and look for entrepreneurial opportunities out of these science projects and other economic development projects. So that's it for the moment on this topic. Thanks, Alan.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Kai. Just give a couple moments here in case anyone else would like to share. All right, very good. So next up, that moves us to our community announcements. Is there anyone in the audience or in the Zoom that would like to share a community announcement with the group?
Hi, this is Gail Jackson of Creative Rhythms. I will have an event tomorrow night from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Anchorage Museum. They have an exhibit on sound. So there's different sounds that are happening.
Wow.
Singing, there's a booth where you can be a DJ, there's outdoor sounds. So I will be doing a presentation on sound with the gongs, and also doing a sound bath, sound journey meditation, sound immersion. Bring a blanket, there's mats provided. Come and enjoy sound. Thank you.
And can you one more time tell us when and where that event is?
That is tomorrow night at the Anchorage Museum, 3rd floor from 6:30 to 8:30.
Wow. Okay. So tomorrow afternoon, that's
Tomorrow.
Thursday,
Thursday.
the 27th.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great, that sounds like fun.
Alan, Kai, just a quick thing. This week, the Startup Digest went out yesterday. If you're not getting it, do sign up. Comes out each Tuesday, hopefully. We have another event this week, Friday at noon. It's the monthly SBIR FAST workshop, if anyone is interested in the federal funding for technology development and the available programs there. That's being hosted by the FAST program. It's in the digest. You can also find it on Facebook, but I hope folks who are interested in that will look for that and participate. Thanks.
Very good. All right. I think that'll just about do it for us. Please follow us on our social media. The links are there on the screen, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, you can always find us at 1MillionCups.com/Anchorage, where you can see the schedule of events. You can see who's coming up in the future 1 Million Cups. You can always also go back and see who has presented previously and register for each of these events. And if you'd like to present at a future 1 Million Cups, 1MillionCups.com/present will get you to the page where you can learn all about what it takes to get registered, get yourself scheduled, and appear here in a future version of this 1 Million Cups program. I want to thank you personally and as our host here for joining us today with 1 Million Cups. We come to you every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock right here at the Umoja co-working space at 3001 Porcupine. Over in Mountain View. We'd love it if you joined us. Of course, if you're stuck in the office, can't get away, you can always join us on Zoom. The big thing is we need your participation. Join us here. Take your place in the entrepreneurial community of the municipality of Anchorage. We would look forward to having you join our community there. Big thanks to our sponsors, AK Version 3 and the Alaska Coffee Company, as well as Focal Point Coaching Alaska. We will look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday for another 1 Million Cups. Thanks.